Now we're going to take our transversal and we're going to make it cross parallel lines, not just any old lines, but parallel lines. When we look, we can see the 8 angles are being formed. Now, here some of them are acute angles, so that one is an acute angle. That one is acute. That's acute, and that's acute. And they're all smaller angles. So we have 4 acute angles formed. 4 acute angles have been formed. Now we know, because they're vertically opposite, that these two must be equal. And these two down here must be equal. I wonder if they're all equal to each other. And it turns out they are. They are all equal. Now what about the other angles? Here is an obtuse angle, and here's an obtuse angle. Here is an obtuse angle, and here is an obtuse angle. So we have formed 4 obtuse angles. And we know because they're vertically opposite, they must be equal. But it actually turns out that all 4 of them are equal. They are all equal. And just a little note, we could have a transversal that is perpendicular to these parallel lines, and in that case, just everything is 90 degrees, so all the angles are equal. Special case. Here's a dynamic diagram, so we can actually watch. We can see as I change the angle of the transversal, all these properties stay the same. Oh, that's an interesting one to stop at. Can you see the connection between the acute angles and the obtuse angles? Yes, they add up to 180. Let's look at these. That's still 180. Yes. 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 So we've got some very interesting things happening. We have all the acute angles are equal to each other, and all the obtuse angles are equal to each other. And in fact, the value of those acute angles plus the value of the obtuse angles adds up to 180. So they are supplementary. Okay. Now, this property only holds true while the lines being crossed are parallel. All right, so now it's time to use some of our special words that we learnt in the last lesson. Alternate angles. So we have 2 parallel lines. Now let's look at the alternate angles. There's 2 pairs. Here's the first pair, and here's the other pair. Now, we know there's something special about these alternate angles. Because they're parallel lines, we know, can you see they're both acuities here? These two are both the acute ones. So they match. So in this case, the purple alternate angles in the parallel lines, the alternate angles are equal. But it's only true in parallel lines. I'm going to emphasize it every time. What about the other pair of alternate angles? Here they are. Ooh, this one's an obtuse angle, and this one's an obtuse angle. And we know from our previous work that they definitely are the same. So these alternate angles are also equal. But again, only because it's parallel lines. Gotta remember that always. And we're almost there. We just have one more of these special names of angles formed by transversals. These were the cointeriors. Do you remember the cointeriors? There were 2 pairs. I'll draw the first pair. There's a pair of cointerior. And there's a pair of cointerior angles. Now let's just focus on one pair of cointeriors. Let's just focus on this one and this one. Let's just focus on this one and this one. Now, could they be equal? This one is acute. Is that one acute? I don't think so. It's clearly obtuse. So cointerior angles are not equal. But remember the other thing we noticed? We noticed that they add to 180. Add to 180 degrees. And the word, of course, that we want there is supplementary. So many words in geometry. Okay? So the cointerior angles are supplementary in parallel lines. That's how we say it, in parallel lines. Only if they're parallel. Again, I'm going to remind you about that. If we have two lines that are not parallel, then clearly these don't add up to 180. You can see they're greater than 180. They're greater than 90 degrees, each of them. So these are not. All right, so putting it all together, we have the alternate angles. Let's draw the alternate angles. These are in parallel lines. So here's some alternate angles. Remember, they're the Z ones. They're on either side of the transversal. Here's another pair of alternate. There are only two pairs of alternate, and in parallel lines, they are equal. In parallel lines. Notice I keep saying only in parallel lines. Now let's look at the cointerior. So here's a cointerior, and here's another cointerior. But can you see they're not equal? This one's an obtuse angle, a big one. This one's a small one. So they are supplementary. They add to 180. That's the cointerior. Let's look at the corresponding. All right, in parallel lines. Now let's take the two easiest corresponding for me to see, here and here. They're both acute, so they are equal in parallel lines. All right, let's see what a textbook question is like. These are very elementary beginning textbooks questions. Now, I'd like you to copy the diagram because it helps you get a feel for the problem. All right, so we're drawing this. There's 130 degrees here, and they're asking us, what is this angle A? What is it? Well, they're both obtuse. We're in parallel lines, so A is definitely 130 degrees. Now, why? This is the part we want to give a reason. Why? Because they are what type of angles? They are corresponding angles in parallel lines. And I'd really like you to write the whole thing. Yeah, that's a lot of work. All right, let's look at this one. So we'll copy that. Two parallel lines there. And we've got 120 degrees here. And we have an A degrees here. They're equal, aren't they? Because they are alternate angles. So I'm just going to say A is 120 degrees. And the reason is alternate angles in parallel lines. You'll get used to writing that sentence. Okay, so typically when we look at this, we're looking for a correct answer and a correct reason. We want the word alternate angles, and I really want in parallel lines. Okay. All right, let's look at a slightly harder one. Again. Okay, so let's copy the diagram down. Decent size so I can see it. 70 degrees. There's a B, C, and an A. All right, now I can go in any order I want. You'll actually find that you can get these angles in all sorts of ways. I'm going to go for the B first because I can see that went really quickly. So I'm going to write B is 70 degrees. I can see they're the same because it's an alternate angle. Alternate angle in parallel lines. Okay, so I've got that one. I'm going to go straight for the A because I can see the A must be the same. Now there are two reasons why it could be the same. It could be the same because it's vertically opposite. Vertically opposite to A. You could also say it's a corresponding angle to the 70 degrees. I'm going to do C. Now there's lots of ways I can do the C's. I could just say it is 110 because it is cointerior. Cointerior angles in parallel lines. Lots of other reasons it could be 110. So here I'm going the corresponding to this one is 110. I could also say it's 110 because the 110 and the 70 is a straight line, which is 180, or I could say the C and D is 180. So you'll see with these types of problems, there are quite a few different ways to get the answer. And if you've done it correctly, all of them will be the same. All right, have a go now at some problems from 7 and 8, and I've asked you to take a photo and submit 8F for me.